Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're so glad to welcome you as part of our community tonight. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and distributed live stream. By entering this virtual meeting room, you give your consent to be recorded and distributed by Vienna Live with Simeon Morrow and other third parties. If you prefer to not be recorded, please go to the LinkedIn Live video feed, the link to which I have just placed in the chat room. Tonight, our featured guest is jazz saxophonist Chris Cheek, whose new album, Keepers of the Eastern Door, will be the subject of tonight's conversation. Chris, welcome.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Chris, so tell us a little bit about where you come from, how your musical tastes were formed, and why you decided to become a professional jazz saxophonist.
Okay, I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, and my father was a public school, middle school band director. So I was kind of around music and musicians and instruments, growing up. Um, I had some really great teachers. I had a classical teacher when I started in middle school, and we studied like classical literature and all the etudes and things like that. Um, but in high school, I joined the jazz band. I was lucky enough to our school had a concert band and a jazz band, so I got to take band for 2 hours a day every day in high school. And my high school band director, Don Kinnison, was one of my big early influences. I really have him to thank for exposing me to music, and we had like a really unique program. We would spend like one day a week doing ear training, and we would spend one day a week just listening to records in class, and that was a really unique, valuable experience. A friend of his was a saxophone player who had just moved back to St. Louis from New York. His name was Fred Baugh, and I started taking lessons with him too on the weekends, and he would basically just give me a stack of records and to listen to and send me home, and that was a really invaluable education, and he liked all sorts of stuff. He turned me on to rhythm and blues and all sorts of different kinds of jazz, bebop and Ornette Coleman and everything really. So I was really exposed to a lot of different musics with him, and he helped me to gain confidence as an improviser and kind of point me in the direction of some things to listen to. So then I went to Webster University, which is a college in St. Louis. I went there for 3 semesters after high school, and there was a really a small but a really good program there led by Paul Demarinis and Steve Schenkel. We had a lot of like combo classes, and also at that time I was starting to do gigs around town with a guy named Bob Cuban. He was a band leader. So I was, on the weekends I was already, playing what they call club dates, and for like private parties and weddings. And in the summer we played on a riverboat that kind of went up and down the Mississippi River, which was nice, even in the heat and humidity. Um, Also, there was a gentleman named Willie Akins who was from St. Louis. He was a wonderful saxophone player, and he kind of invited me to start sitting in with his band. So like every Monday, I would go to this club called the Barbary Coast, um, and he would let me sit in on a few songs, and that was a really incredible experience. The audience was really animated, and they would like shout and really participate in the gig, which was like a new experience for me. Um, and so but deciding to be a professional musician, I'm still not sure that I've come to terms with that in a way. I've just kind of gotten caught up in it. I've been asked to play with people and record and do gigs and perform, and it's just something that's kind of been ongoing. I don't know that I really made a conscious decision necessarily, other than I don't really didn't really have anything else to fall back on, you know.
Wow, that
So it's
sounds
just
sounds incredible. I mean, as a young person, I can completely understand what you're saying, that it wasn't something you decided. It was just that was where everything was going. I mean, playing in those club dates and being invited by those people to perform with them. Are those opportunities still available to young saxophonists today?
well, I hope so. I don't really know for certain, but I think there are. I mean, I guess there are more DJs now. Like playing parties and things like that. But I think there are still bands that play, and hopefully, um, I mean, I don't know for certain, but I would hope so. I mean, I think, it's like my band director was also doing those kinds of gigs, and my first gigs were actually with him. He invited me to play on a few gigs with his band, and when I saw that that was possible, that these guys were playing and making money and having fun doing it, I thought, wow, that's I didn't know someone could do that. So that gave me the idea that it was possible. Um,
Okay. Let's
so
listen to let's listen to our next track. This is On a Clear Day. So tell us, what is this album all about? We're going to see the cover in a second, which is of a Native American sitting in a canoe from a still photograph from 1910, and we just heard some music that could have been easily sung, a track sung over by Marvin Gaye. Tell us what's this album all about?
yeah, that's a good question. It started. I guess it started. I visited the St. Louis Art Museum several summers ago, and the picture that's on the back of the record, called by Edward Curtis, called the Canyon de Chailly, that kind of that stayed with me. That image, and um, I wasn't thinking, consciously. Yeah, that's it. I wasn't thinking consciously about that, but when Jerome Sabah, the owner of Analog Tone Factory, approached me about making this record, um, I started to, think of some songs that I had been working with and playing and trying to arrange. And when he asked me about the artwork, I sent him that picture because I had taken a picture of it on my phone at the museum, but I forgot who the author of the photograph was. And he tracked it down and he found out that it was Edward Curtis. Then we subsequently found the photograph that we wound up using for the front cover. Um, so I think these images in a way kind of helped me get an idea of what the record was going to be about. I you know I had been, I'm always kind of collecting tunes and trying tunes and doing different arrangements with different people and different groups. But I think seeing these pictures kind of helped me decide on how some of these tunes I had had, how they could be connected. And to me, it started to feel like that I wanted the music um, to kind of honor like the traditions of our kind of collective personal and musical ancestors. And I also felt like, as an American-born white man, born in the late 20th century of English and Irish descent, to me it felt important to acknowledge the gift and privilege of being born in this time, and also to somehow try to reconcile in a musical way, like the difficult and destructive elements of human nature, civilization, and the society that's evolved. Um, and I kind of wanted to respond by trying to build something that was worthwhile, useful, and positive, that reflected kind of like a disappearing way of life, that's kind of been eclipsed by the modern world and technology. One that to me, um, the indigenous Native American tribes, embodied about being, living in accord with their environment and with nature. Um, I, my partner and I visited Lake Champlain a couple of years ago, and I saw all these signs about of like famous battles between the Mohawk Indians and the English settlers. And when I got home, I started doing some more research about it, and I found that the Mohawk Indians, the name that was given to them was Keepers of the Eastern Door. Their job was to protect the eastern seaboard and the waterways from the growing settlements, of French, English, and Spanish settlers. So it all kind of just I just started ruminating about that, and um, but I saw it more as like a metaphorical thing rather than about the Mohawk Indians specifically, kind of like what their plight and their struggle represented, and how we still kind of see that, in the modern world, um, somehow.
And Chris, tell us a little bit about this Edward Curtis. So this is a very important man for for these photos. Tell us a little bit about him.
Oh yeah, well yeah, I'm still finding out more about him. He was hired to document the Native American tribes and their disappearing ways of life. And ironically, he never got paid for much of his work, and he wound up selling his work for much less than what it cost him to produce it. Um, but all of his photographs have been cataloged and are available online now, and it's really fascinating. He really had um, uh, left us like a really valuable resource in documenting um, these indigenous peoples. You know, Interesting. Another thing that was interesting to me, the St. Louis Art Museum was built in the early 1900s, and it was part of the 1904 World's Fair, which was basically called it was the known as the Louisiana Exposition, and the Louisiana Purchase was uh, that huge part of Central and Northern America that was acquired from the French, which basically gave the settlers, free reign to just kind of do what they wanted to with. So I thought it was interesting that when that picture was taken, the Canyon de Chelly, That was taken in 1903 or 1904. At that same time, they were having the World's Fair in St. Louis. So we already see this incredible disparity between civilization that's growing and kind of taking over the land, and these people who are still existing, trying to live in harmony with the natural world. Um, and I just thought it was kind of poignant. But for me, I thought more about like all the innocent people that kind of got caught up in that struggle and that battle. Just people that were trying to raise families and live their lives that had nothing to do with any of the conflicts that had no choice in what was happening.
Okay. Let's
So,
listen to
so
excellent. Thank you very much. Let's listen to our next track. This is Keepers of the Eastern Door. Tell us now about the musicians on this album. We hear guitar playing a lot of melodic lines along the saxophone, almost as equals. We hear the drums in the back doing something that we're not used to normally hearing, not the normal hi-hat and snare drum, something a little bit almost world music like. Tell us, who are these musicians? How did you choose them? What to you makes a good musician? What do you look for in a musician? Chris, I'm sorry, you're muted.
sorry.
Perfect.
Jerome suggested that we try to get Bill Frisell to record. Um, I know him from through Paul Motion. I played in Paul Motion's electric bebop band for a number of years, and so I had met Bill through Paul, and I've always loved Bill Frisell's playing. He's just like an honest and unique um, and expansive musician. I think his music really transcends the boundaries of style and genre. Kind of like how Duke Ellington described the nature of his music. He called it beyond category. Um, I like that idea. I've been a big fan of Bill's different groups throughout the years. Um, I heard that trio play at the Drake in Amherst a couple of years ago. Um, and I know that Bill's works with Tony and Rudy in different combinations, but I'd never heard him in that specific combination, and I really liked um, the set list. It was really diverse, and they just they just looked like they were having a great time playing together. They were laughing, and that really came through uh, in the music. And I guess I tend to gravitate towards musicians who enjoy different kinds of music um, and who like to improvise. Um, for my own projects, I don't always have like a very fixed idea of what I want, like as far as groove or accompaniment. Um, so I like the players to feel free to bring their own interpretations and ideas to the table. Um, and I basically I appreciate musicians who are open-minded and don't try to impose some kind of like stylistic agenda or preconception on the music. Also, there's been a history of horn players playing with well-established rhythm sections. You have Ben Webster with the Oscar Peterson trio, Stan Getz with Oscar Peterson, and so I like that idea of having a rhythm section that already plays well together and has a great chemistry. Um, so it's going to sound good, you know.
Okay, let's listen to
Right.
our next track. This is O Sacrum Convivium. Haunting. So this brings us to our philosophical part of our conversation. Who's Keeping the Eastern Door is the title. Chris, in the liner notes to Keepers of the Eastern Door, you write, quote, looking at the Canyon de Chelly, I found it's startling and ironic that in 1904, the year Edward Curtis captured that image of a group of Native Americans on horseback in the Canyon de Chelly, simultaneously, St. Louis was hosting the Louisiana Purchase Exposition, commonly known as the World's Fair. This was a centennial celebration of the 1803 acquisition from the French colonial empire in North America of an enormous area encompassing most of the central U.S. At the time, this effectively gave the United States the exclusive authority and preemptive right to take Native American lands by treaty or force. I think of Keepers of the Eastern Door as an ode to those whose lives embody an intellect and intuition profoundly tuned to the natural world, for peoples that, in the midst of seemingly insurmountable odds, strive to preserve a way of life lived in harmony and balance with their surroundings, and who acknowledge and seek to commune with a hidden, immutable dimension that underlies and interweaves throughout the sensorial realm. End quote. As we discover this album and its extraordinary story, a strange feeling overtakes me. Just like Edward Curtis, we're admiring a way of life that couldn't coexist with our American way of life. How, as modern Westerners, can each of us live up to the ideals of this album? And to do so, whose example should we follow? The Kutenai Duck Hunters or Edward Curtis?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Um, I like what uh, President Kennedy said once. He said, don't ask what your country can do for you, but what can you do for your country? And we could say the same about the world that we live in. If we start asking what can we give before what can we get, then that puts us on a very different course. And I think just by simply taking the time to appreciate the world we live in and acknowledging the mystery and gift of life, and not being so hard and demanding on each other and the Earth's resources, that each of us can make a difference. I mean, what if the goal of life is to cooperate and help each other? That's very different than the message that we're bombarded with, on a daily basis. But again, for me, I started thinking of Keepers of the Eastern Door more as a metaphor, about people that try to preserve a certain sensitivity that's not advertised anymore. Um, Anyone that tries to preserve like a traditional craft, like playing an instrument or writing with a, a pencil and paper, things that don't need a computer to do, things that um uh like what Ornette Coleman said, if you can read and write but don't, what's the point? These things that make us human, like the humanities, I guess those are the things that will save humanity in the end. Um,
Okay. And what do you when you see that picture
hmm,
when we see the Kutenai Duck Hunter, are we looking at
yeah,
a victim or are we looking at a hero? Are we looking who what should we what's your take on that picture?
yeah. I mean, I think potentially, symbolically, we can embody the ideals of both the figure in the canoe, um, that looks to integrate into the natural world of his or her surroundings, and Edward Curtis as the observer, kind of capturing this like subtle and profound beauty of this world that we live in. Um, these fleeting moments in the changing river of time. The music, hopefully, it reflects. In my mind, it certainly reflects like a plight and the struggle, but it also, I think, importantly, and hopefully, reflects the integrity and resolve that goes along with that of believing in a tradition or a way of life that's um, that's worth holding on to.
Okay. Let's listen to our final selection of tonight. This is Smoke Rings. Are there any
Good.
questions? Would anyone like to jump in and ask a question, make a comment? Chris is here to answer your questions, hear your comments. So I will lead with the last question. Anyone, please feel free to jump in afterwards. What do you wish all of us, Chris, who listen to this album, what do you want us to take away? Should we go and look at Edward Curtis photographs, or should we learn an instrument, or should we
Hmm.
just feel good? What do you what should we take away?
Yeah, that all sounds good. I mean, I think it's, looking at Edward Curtis's, you know, kind of digging a little deeper into his life and photographs is definitely worth doing. As far as the music goes, I don't try to promote an ideology or something like specifically. I just simply want people and hope people enjoy the music, and hopefully don't get tired of it. I also hope that it could be, appreciated as like a both like a focused listening experience, but also like an environmentally friendly background music experience. Um, I have some friends in Spain. Years ago, we were talking about like what makes a good record, and we decided that if you can take a nap to it, then it's a good record. If you can, so if people can listen to it and fall asleep, then that's great. Um, yeah.
Okay. Let's see how we can get this album. So it is on analogtonefactory.com. There we see it right away. Chris Cheek, Keepers of the Eastern Door. You can order vinyl there. So the album is available there. Um, and I'll put that in the chat room. So that's analogtonefactory.com. That's where you can buy the album. And to stay in touch with Chris, it's easy enough. It's chrischeekmusic.com. Chris, can people reach out to you through your website if they have any questions they want to?
Yeah, they should be able to.
Okay, fantastic. So just go, I guess, go to, oh, we've got appearances there. We've got upcoming concerts. So we've got all the information, and you can even contact him easily
Oh, there
enough.
you go.
There's a little message board at the bottom. So please feel free to reach out to Chris with your questions and your comments. That's chrischeekmusic.com. Thank you so very much to Chris Cheek.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks for all your time today.
So let's take a look quickly at Vienna Live at www.simeonmore.com. You can find out about all upcoming shows. And I'd like to point out if you click on Become a Sponsor for 5 months, you can sponsor the show as an individual for $5 a month. You'll receive a Vienna Live Celebrates 5 years mug. Or for $10 a month, you get a Vienna Live Celebrates 5 years mug and a Vienna Live City tote bag. You can also just click on a one-time payment for customs and you can sponsor Vienna Live with no minimum. Thank you very much for your support. And coming up next week, we have Bob Schlesinger, Falling from Earth. Jazz pianist Bob Schlesinger releases Falling from Earth, his long-time awaited debut as a leader, featuring guitarist Mike Stern, bassist Eddie Gomez, and drummer Billy Drummond. Let's hear this all-star jazz quartet in action. That is Bob Schlesinger, Falling from Earth. Once again, all information about upcoming shows is available at www.simeonmoro.com. Once again, thank you so very much to Chris Cheek. Thank you to Vienna Live's corporate and individual sponsors. Your ongoing support allows Vienna Live to operate as a free classical music public service. Thanks to my cousin Mike, a marketer from Layer App. If you're an architect or an engineer, they have a really cool tool you should check out. Thanks most of all to you, our participants, who make it all worthwhile from New London, New Hampshire, and Northampton, Massachusetts. Goodbye, and see you next Wednesday.
Bye. Thank you.